Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
Hello.
Hi, Suzanne. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you, Ray?
I'm good, yes. Nice to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you. I have heard lovely things about you.
Oh, well, thanks. Nice to know the rumor mill works.
Yes.
There we go.
Hey, Heather.
Hi.
Excellent, excellent. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
Well, let me start by saying thank you for doing this. I mean, it's not exactly Joe Rogan, but it at least gives us a snapshot of what's happening in New Hampshire right now. And so for that, I really am grateful. What I wanted to do, if you don't mind, is we can talk about the play here in a few minutes, but I would kind of like to find out a little bit more about you both. Waylon sent me over your bios from the program, and they really piqued my interest. So why don't we start alphabetically? Heather, why don't you go first? And what I'd like to know is really a lot of your background. What got you interested in theater, and then that arc that has taken you to where you are now, if you don't mind.
Sure. I've been interested in doing theater pretty much as long as I can remember, as long as I have memories. I grew up all over the United States. I moved around a lot. My dad had a job in natural gas, so we were always moving for promotions or transfers. And actually, I'm at my parents' house right now in North Carolina, and my dad had just gotten out a photo album for my daughter to look through of me when I was a child. And one of the things that was stuffed inside there was a newspaper article. When I lived in Chicago, I remember when I turned 10, the only thing I asked my mother for was an acting agent. And my mother said, no, you're going to have a normal childhood. That's not happening. But there was a casting call for Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn's Overboard in Chicago. So my mom brought myself and a couple neighborhood girls with us to go down and just try our luck. Of course, we didn't even make it past the first station. They thought we looked too young, and we didn't even get to read any sides. But that was funny coming across that just recently and thinking about that. I went to college for acting at Marymount Manhattan and got a BFA in 98. And then in between my junior and senior year, I studied at the Gaiety School of Acting in Dublin, Ireland. And I did an Irish theater course. And I fell in love with that school. And I knew they had a 2-year conservatory program. So it was my hope that after I graduated Marymount, if I could just make some money and save up and see if I could audition. And let's see, they were in partnership with the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. So that's who came and auditioned me in New York. And I ended up getting into that program. And I did that a couple of years after I graduated, a few years after, from 2001 to 2003. I should have stayed in Ireland and tried to make it as an actor there, tried to get an agent, but I knew that no theater company would sponsor me, and I didn't want to go back to a day job. So I moved back to New York, and I started working with a theater company that my friends from my first college started called Feed the Herd. And we were doing a bunch of really weird, fun, wild stuff. And that was fun. We had a great little space in the theater district in New York. And then after that space, we lost that space. We kind of all disbanded, and I met my husband and we started traveling, and I just kind of left acting on the wayside. I was auditioning for things, and nothing that I was coming across was of any good. The writing was just poor. A lot of it was student films, and I did a few of those that were okay. But so I just started working on the Friday, Saturday nights so that I could make more money to go traveling with my husband and exploring and adventuring all over the way, all over the world. And then we got married, and then I had kids. And my husband's job being what it was, I had to be the primary caregiver because he was always working overtime or 24-hour shifts all over the place. So it was my hope that when we moved to New Hampshire last summer, that I would try to refocus myself now in my mid-40s and try to figure out where the heck I'm at. And I went to see the community theater's production of Barefoot in the Park with a friend. And I said, hey, you know what? That's pretty good. And I liked, what they stood for and all of the updates I was getting and newsletters. I said, let's see if they have any auditions. And then lo and behold, they had 2 roles for women in their 40s. And I was like, well, when do you ever see that? It's only like 20s and 60s. And I said, you know what? Just go for it. You haven't done any theater in 14, 15 years. What's the worst that can happen? Just get yourself out there and just, leap and the net will appear. And I went in and met Wayland, and he was so lovely. And here I am, and with Suzanne. And it's so great because Suzanne and I have similar backgrounds. And so we had a lot in common. So we had a lot to talk about on our trip to Maine, which I'm sure you'll get into. Yeah. So very happy to be back. Nerve-wracked, but happy.
Suzanne, let's talk about you for a second.
Yeah. So my spiel starts a little different than Heather's does. I did not grow up wanting to be an actor. That was not in my plan. It was not something I was aware of. I grew up here in New Hampshire. I went to Bishop Brady High School in Concord, and my freshman year French teacher also ran the drama program. And he kept saying to me, oh, Suzanne, you've got to do it. You'd love it. You should do it. Come try out for me. It'll be amazing. You'll love it. And I was kind of like, what? No, are you kidding? I don't do that. No. And he actually got into a bind with his spring show my freshman year, where unfortunately the props person had a death in the family right before show weekend. And so he said to me, could you please do me a favor, come in, run props during the show. You stand behind this table offset. I'll tell you exactly what to do. Make sure the props come on and off, and it'd be really just helping me out. And I said, okay, I'll do that for you. And they were doing a production of The Mouse That Roared. And I stood off in the wings and watched this show and just thought, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. Oh my gosh. And I was still very terrified of the idea of, memorizing lines and being on stage and being looked at. And I said to him, okay, I will audition for your fall production if you promise that I will only be considered for whatever the smallest female role is. And he was doing The Crucible. And so I auditioned, and I was cast as the smallest female role, which is Susanna Walcott. And I had 4 lines right at the beginning. And then I was, part of all the large group scenes. And the next show he did, I got cast as the lead, and it was all kind of downhill from there. And it just became my focus and my love. And it was just a whole new world opened up. I ended up going to a liberal arts school in Northern Jersey, Drew University, and got a bachelor's in theater arts. And I came home for a year after college back to New Hampshire to, wait tables and save some money. The idea was to move to New York, which is where a lot of my friends from school were, but I didn't have the funds to do that yet. While I was up here during that year, I went to, and I'm not going to remember the name, but I went to one of those kind of, giant cattle call for the season. I think it was down in Boston. And one of the things that I got called back for was a master's program at the Drama Centre London. They were doing, and they at the time were very known for their undergrad program. It's where I think, Pierce Brosnan went, and Colin Firth went, and Paul Bettany went. And nowadays, Emilia Clarke is kind of one of their, famous people. But I hadn't even considered grad school. But it was in London, and it wasn't a bid I didn't get in. It was come audition for us. And I thought, okay, I've been saving up some money to go to New York. Maybe I'll use this money and go over to London. And it was a new master's program they were doing. It was the first year of it, and it was a 1 year intensive, 13-month master's in European classical acting. And there were 3 segments to it, and one was at the Drama Center, kind of doing what they did, their specific brand of acting. And the second term was studying at the Globe with their Master of Text and Master of Dance. And the third term was going to Moscow and studying at the Boris Shukin Theater Institute at the Vakhtangov Theater. And I flew over and I auditioned and I got in. I was kind of shocked all along the way, and I kind of kept thinking to myself, like, did they me? Like, are you sure? I was, it was a small group of 14 of us, and so I took myself to London for the year, and got to perform on the Globe stage, and got to go to Russia, and it was wonderful and overwhelming. Looking back, we were learning we kind of picked up and started over every term. There's 3 very different approaches to text and to acting and to movement. So it was a lot to take in, but it was really wonderful. And so I came back, I moved to Jersey City, and I was doing the bartending and acting thing in New York. And as it does, the amount of time I got to spend on my acting and the amount of time that I was spending bartending, trying to pay for my life, started to really not be uneven out. So I ended up, for family reasons, moving down to DC, which is where my sister was at the time, and she was having children, and I wanted to be an aunt. And I said, I can bartend and kind of act in any city, so I'll just go down to DC. And I actually was in a few things in DC, enjoyed my time in DC. And one of the temp jobs that I got to support my acting while I was in DC ended up turning into a career, kind of without me realizing it. And I had gotten very tired of living paycheck to paycheck and not having a 401k and having no idea how I would support myself next year or the following year. And I said, the joy that acting was bringing me was not standing up against the anxiety the lifestyle was bringing me, because I loved acting, but I wasn't in love with being an actor. And it's a certain kind of person that can persevere through that kind of uncertainty. And I don't know that was for me in reality. So I actually kind of just as things were starting to go really well for me in DC acting wise, I'd done a fringe show where I was reviewed really well. I was invited to be a part of this all-female company, but I ended up taking this job. And kind of the job just kind of took over my life for about a decade. And so when that same job finally allowed me to move remote, I had followed that job from DC to Boston to New York, actually. I moved from New York in 2020 to where I am now in Pennacook, New Hampshire. And I said, okay, I gave up a lot of my life for this career, and I'm going to get back to some things that I love and that I want. And I hadn't been on stage in over a decade. And growing up here, I knew of the Players. Players have been around for a long time, have a great reputation, have done wonderful shows. I remember going to see The Sound of Music when I was growing up there, all sorts of great memories. And I also went and saw Barefoot in the Park. And I was like, yeah, this is a group I want to be a part of. What are they doing? What are they doing next? How can I get involved? And again, I was like, what do you mean you're doing a show with 2 women in their 40s? Because again, that never happens. And I showed up and I read for Wayland, and I was cast, and I kind of am in awe of being able to be in a show that is so beautiful and so well written. Directed by someone who is so talented and kind, with the support of such a wonderful group of people who really care about the arts in this community, with a cast of people who are fantastic, fun to be around, and good. Everyone's good. Like, I just kind of feel like that doesn't happen. You never get all of those things. You never get good people and a good script and a good part. Like, that's not a thing. Yeah. So that's kind of where I am now. This is my first, toe dip back in after a decade away. And it's been a lot of finding out what I remember and what I need to relearn and what's different now and how I'm different now. And it's been amazing.
Mama, there's so much here. Okay. I'm trying not to be intimidated by two people with your pedigrees.
No, it was so long ago. It was
So long ago.
It may as well be first grade.
True.
Got ya. Sure. It's just between us. But that's impressive. It's very impressive to hear you both with your backgrounds. Heather, I wanted to touch on something you had said. You talked about early on when you were a child about the Overboard film. But film and theater are two different venues, two different ways to go. How did the trip to the stage happen? Why did you choose that rather than just stay in TV, film, or whatever? How did that happen?
I think I just wanted an agent. It didn't matter what I was doing, but I was always more attracted to stage work. I had a very influential high school theater teacher. We did the effect of gamma rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds. Does that ring a bell? It's a very long title. And that was my first straight drama that I got to play a lead role, and it was really meaty, and it was just really dark and full. And he was such a light in my life. And such an inspiration, and he really believed in me. And so it was really always stage for me. I mean, the first thing that I saw, that my mother tells me that I saw when I was very young, was a production of Peter Pan, which happens to be my favorite book ever. And I was captivated. I think I was 5 or 6, and my mom said I would just talk about it all the time. I want to do this, I want to do that. So, of course, I immersed my children in Peter Pan stuff, and I have Peter Pan hats all over my house and swords, and I don't know how many times I made them dress up like that. But
they're scarred for life now.
No, not at all. My son can wear tights; he's no problem with that. But stage was always really what I wanted to do. I did do a couple student films that were pretty good, but I don't really have much experience doing anything really, like I said. But stage would be where I would have most of my experience from many years ago.
Suzanne, what a great comment about I love acting, but not being an actor. It's a very interesting perspective. What would either of you say to somebody who is thinking about getting into acting? I mean, obviously we all don't have to go to Europe to take acting lessons or to study necessarily, but what would your comment be to somebody who's maybe in high school, maybe in college, and just testing the waters? I mean, acting, stage performing is pretty darn intensive. Everything from, just memorizing lines. If you've got a major role, that can be quite an undertaking. So what would either of you say to someone who's wants to enter into that venue? I'm sure they all want to go to Broadway. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. So, but what would you say to somebody?
I would say to remember that you will always be interviewing for a new job, and you need to be ready and be okay with that. That's the life, there needs to be a certain amount of confidence that comes from within, that doesn't come from accolades, that doesn't come from people telling you did a great job. You have to believe you're good, and that has to be real, because it's hard to stand up in front of people in audition after audition and be told you're wrong. You're wrong for this. We don't want you, not you. And you have to be able to take that and say, okay, no problem, next. and let it go and go to the next. And it's a certain personality that can do that. And if you're too concerned with being perfect for the panel and not thinking, well, is this role perfect for me? Then you'll get lost in this kind of, why am I not good enough? Why am I wrong? Because you're not wrong. You just haven't found the part that's for you yet. And that's hard, and especially hard when you're young and you're still growing your own confidence and you're still
it's hard
learning.
when you're in your 60s.
Well, sure. But, and you're still learning. And I would also say, there's a lot of different approaches to acting. Some people are all about credentials and education. Some people are totally self-taught. But I would say, try a bunch of different things out. Is it Uta Hagen? Is it Meisner? Is it, whoever? There's a lot of different approaches. Take a bunch of different classes from a bunch of different areas. Read a bunch of different books. Read some Stanislavski. See what you think, because you might be surprised what works for you or doesn't work for you. And I would say revisit that every 5 years, because you change and you grow, and things that affected you one way affect you differently. Or so I would
even lessons learned in life.
Absolutely.
That's impressive.
Absolutely. I did an apprenticeship at the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey when I was in college. My university, the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, was on our campus, even though they weren't officially affiliated. But I did an acting apprenticeship there with them, and their artistic director said, which just infuriated me at the time, she said to all of us, she said, if there's anything you love as much as acting, please go do that. And whatever I was, 19, 20, I was like, oh, you don't know me. How could you say something like that? And I would say there's definitely some truth to that. Just because you love it doesn't mean it has to be your whole life. And there's an element of, when you make something your job, does it take the joy out of it for you? So I would say, if you can pursue a career in acting and have that be your career, and it still brings you joy, fantastic. But if it takes the joy out of it, which I think it did for me when I was young, find another way. There are always ways, like amazing, beautiful community theaters all over, that will allow you to have that be a part of your life. It doesn't have to be how you pay the bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a friend who has a friend who does some Broadway shows, and it has just become a job. I mean, the glamour is just gone.
Yes.
And he shows up 20 minutes before they're ready to go on. He gets ready, and then they just do it, and he goes home. It's just a job. There's no glamour left in it.
Right.
I would say never lose your sense of wonder and play. For me, it's all just like, I'm just a big kid, and I'm just here, throwing it out into the universe. And that doesn't make sense insofar as making a living at it, but and insofar as trying out for things and taking risks and seeing if you're in the right place at the right time, and exactly what I did to audition for this show, and found myself exactly where Suzanne explained it perfectly, with this amazing cast. And here we are. We're storytellers. We're telling a story, and how lucky we are to have such good writing supporting us. Every time I get nervous or start thinking, second guessing myself, I just say, just be present and listen, and trust yourself, and trust your work, and trust the words that are written, because this is a beautiful story, and you're just part of it. So I just, take it back a notch and just play, really just play.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a second. You both are kicking off the dust or the rust, depending on how you want to look at it here, to get back in. Either of you found any difficulties? Have you found any hesitations, anything that you weren't maybe expecting? You thought, it's like riding a bike. I'm just going to go out there and do my thing. And all of a sudden you're like, no, that's not so much what I thought it was.
Right. Line learning. My memory isn't the same as it used to be in my 20s.
Boy, I'll tell you.
That was something. I'm aged, but at the same time, like you said, I have all this life experience under my belt, and I have, I don't know, I guess you don't take yourself as seriously. At least I don't. I do sometimes. I'm a perfectionist in some way.
We're getting there.
But it's like, well, I've been through this in my life and I've been through that in my life. So just get out there and just do it. Life's too short. What are you waiting for? This is something that intrinsically has been part of you, in the deepest part of you for so long. It's going to be really weird for my kids to see me do this because they've never seen me do anything like that. My husband saw me when we were first dating. I think the first thing he saw me do was a sketch comedy show that I helped write at Upright Citizens Brigade in New York. And he walked across the stage and opened up the curtain where I was standing waiting to go on and said, "I'm here. I brought all my friends. We're here. We're waiting." I'm like, "What are you doing? What is going on?" So there's a lot of learning to teach people, in my family, but I know that my kids and my husband are going to be just like, wow, okay, that's who mom is. Like, we know who this person is, buried deep down inside, but it's good to bring all of that out,
It's always fascinating to me, the reaction that your friends and family have who have never seen you on stage, and they come away with like, okay, what was that?
Right.
What in the world? They also all of a sudden have this reverence for you that they did not, that's like they've seen this personality that they never knew existed.
Right. Or then they'll be like, "Oh, you pretend to like us because you're the actor," right? You get some of that sometimes.
Suzanne, how about you?
I would actually say what was tough for me that I didn't anticipate, but I guess I should have, was when Heather was talking before about, not losing your sense of play. That was hard for me to recapture. I guess I should have realized I've spent the last 10 years, trying to be appropriate and trying to be correct in whatever situation I'm in, whether that's at work or at home. But I didn't have any really, I wasn't, my tool got rusty of just letting it all out, so I would step on stage and I would think, oh, can I do that? Is that too much? Is that too big? Is that the wrong choice? When there's no time to think that, you do it and worry about it later. And your director will pull you back if you're too much. That's their job. And it took me a while to kind of shake the cobwebs off, listening to my instincts. And so, being able to be too big or go too far or, laugh too loud or cry too hard or not trying to get it right the first time, just trying to see what comes out of your body when you give it over, kind of stop trying to own the script and own the words so much. John Cariani wrote this play. I'm going to see what his words do to me. And then I will let Wayland, come and mold me through it. But that was really hard. It was really hard to loosen up enough to actually start working. I feel like it took me a few weeks to really give over in that way. And I wasn't anticipating that, but thinking about it, it kind of makes perfect sense. I'm not surprised that happened. Because I think, like I said, I think that is, you've got to use your tools or they get rusty. And I wasn't using mine for a long time.
Yeah. This topic of play really intrigues me. I lately, how do I put this? I've come to believe, and I've had chance to speak to some young people, high school, early college, whatever. And I have said to them that my approach to theater is, especially in rehearsal, this is our chance as adults to go back to the playground. We can't do that because we look weird. But if you approach rehearsals and acting as though you were back on the playground, then there's a chance for you to go back on the slides and back on the climbing thing and the one that goes around. And so when you're on stage, what you want to do, or in a rehearsal anyway, is you want to touch things, you want to move things, you want to say things differently. You know, you want to blink, you want to limp, you want to try whatever it takes this is the chance to do it, to get back out there and literally play.
Mhm.
To hear you both use that term, it to me is really, really very encouraging. Can you explore that a little bit more, what you each mean by play? So that somebody who's like, what do you mean play? I'm going to go on stage, I have to do my lines, I have to do my blocking. Where does the play come in?
So for me, I would say it's about who you're playing with. And it's about the relationships that you create on stage and the relationship you create with whoever's in the room, with your audience, whether that's just the director and the stage manager or, you know, a whole audience. But, you know, of seeing how you can change the energy in the room, of seeing how you can, you know, bring your scene partner in closer to you or keep them at arm's length, or just how you can receive from them. You know, what, you know, if I'm in a scene with Heather, like, what does it do if I give her this reaction, or if I give her less, or if I give her more? Like, you know, how does that change things for her, and how does that change the dynamic between us? And I think the play is so it's playing catch. You know, it's going back and forth, and it's being open to receiving from the other person, and knowing that person is open to receiving from you, and creating that kind of safety with each other that you don't talk about ahead of time. You just kind of are experiencing in the moment together, and, you know, and having those amazing moments, and you walk off stage and look at each other and say, that was really fun. Did you feel that? Like, yeah, you felt that, didn't you? Like, so I think it's all about being open to possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And trusting, like you said, and listening well, and just saying, you know what, I'm going to be present. I'm not going to worry about this or that. Yes, I had this note. I have that in my head. I'm going to get that note, hopefully, but I'm going to be present, and I'm going to give an energy. You know, it's just like you said, giving over. You just give over, and you just let go.
Are you having a lot of moments in the production where that you're allowed to do that, where you can feel free to do that, to produce those emotions and feelings?
I think, yes. I think with any good writing, you do have that, and actors that you trust, and a director that you trust and trusts you, let you do that. I find sometimes when I do that and I go, oh, wow, that was interesting, then I'll kind of flake out on the next part. Oh, wait, don't go there. Oh, that was really great. Oh, what's your next line? Better make sure you're still there. So, you know, there's a lot of I guess, mastery. I wouldn't call it mastery, because it's not really mastery on my part, but, you know, there's a lot of experimenting that goes on, that you still have to, I don't want to say be in your head, because you shouldn't really be in your head, but I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at, Suzanne?
I'm not sure, but I trust you. I trust it was going to be great wherever you were going. But I think that, you know, it is a lot about who you're playing with. And even if you are doing a monologue or on stage by yourself, you're not alone. It's you and the audience, and it's you and the words, you know, and it's all about, it's always going to be about give and take, you know, and I think that, when you come at something, I think our job as the actor is to show up, aware enough, ready enough, knowing your lines enough that I can give you, whether that's my scene partner or my audience, what they need from me, you know, so that, yeah, if something happens to Heather on stage and she kind of takes things in a different direction, because that's what she's feeling at the moment, I am ready to go with her. She's not going to throw me off. I am with her, because I did my work. I know my lines well enough. I know where I'm supposed to step and on what line, and when I'm supposed to turn the music, and when I'm supposed to take my jacket off, that I can go on the journey with her if she's going on a journey. and knowing that I am free to play and do that as well, because she will also come with me.
Mm-hmm.
This is refreshing. And maybe it's because of your backgrounds. So much of community theater can be filled with false egos that can really damage a production, because they don't understand the give and take and the need that I may need to let you shine. I may have to let you shine. It can't always be me. And I think that gets buried or lost, or maybe not even known in community theater a lot of times. And to hear you both so willing to make sure that the other one is getting their needs met on stage is really, really refreshing.
It should be supportive if it has the word community in it.
I remember being told point blank in acting classes that my job was to make my scene partner look good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's very
Say yes and to your partner. Say yes and.
That is my job. Is to make, and if we're both doing our jobs, then it's all working.
Right.
Because they're taking care of me and I'm taking care of them. Because that works better. Because you can feel it on stage when each actor is taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the energy isn't there and the relationship isn't there, and it feels awkward and strange, and
awkward is a great word for it.
You know,
yeah,
you can tell.
Yeah, it's painful actually to watch. Do you both have different or similar approaches to how you build your character, or do you just sort of think it morphs over time and it's a natural progression?
When I first read a script, I'm very, I guess, auditory driven. When I read a script, I can hear it. I can hear all the voices. I can hear intentions. I can hear rhythms. I'm very language based myself. It was very good for me to move to Ireland and work over there, because I don't know if Suzanne had the same experience. In New York, it was all, in your head, like, remember that time when your gerbil died, and in Ireland, it was very physical based. We did shiatsu, we did yoga, we did a lot of things to be in our body, which was very freeing. And that was a different approach. And that was a welcome approach for me to get out of my head so much. I feel like I should be moving more, which I'm not. I always see Suzanne. I'm like, man, I should have stretched before I came here tonight, because I feel that loosens everything up, all the juju, all the chakras, whatever. I believe in that. I think that come show week, I'm going to make sure that I have some time to take long walks and do some breathing, and just make sure that my body as a whole, as an instrument, is open. And Wayland has us doing these exercises with diction, holding a pencil in our mouth. So we have first position, which is right behind our teeth, and second position is like back where the molars are. And I had this trip planned since September. So when our show got moved, I felt really nervous about being away from our cast, a week before we went up. And Wayland's like, use the pencil when you're away, just make sure you're. So even before this, I said, I better at least get one scene done with the pencil. And I'm down there. My brother walks by like, does your character talk like that? Is that the reason why you're like, I said, no, it's for diction. Can you hear me? So Wayland has us doing that, which I think is actually pretty helpful. I know Suzanne did her due diligence and said that she went through the whole script doing that. But yeah, it's experimenting and playing with one another, and just being open to what Wayland wants and what Wayland sees. And we all have such care for that man, especially because he's from a place that is so akin to this place in Maine where we are. I saw the interview that John Cariani did about almost Maine, but they brought up Last Gas, and he was just talking about writing about rural people in general. He said that's not trending now. It's race, it's sexual orientation, it's urban stories. The rural people have been, they're quirky people and they're hicks and they're this and that. No one really sees them as real people. And I want to write them as real people because, they're a huge part of this population of America. So this is kind of Waylon's baby because these people are the people he grew up with. So we have so much ownness and so much at stake. I mean, we're not all, let's make Waylon happy, but it really, he's so caring about us. And so this is so precious. And it's almost like, I feel like sometimes this is like a gift, not only that we're giving to each other and to the community, because it's a wonderful story that needs to be told, but also to Waylon, because this is where he's from. And this is an integral part of his life. And it's a dream for him to put this up and see this come to life and be authentic and be true.
Yeah, nice. Well said. So, Suzanne, what about you? Your approach to all this?
Yeah, so similar experience to Heather, but I'm text based. That's where I go first. So the first thing I do when I get a script is I read it with no intention. I read it like it's a novel I picked up off a shelf, and as soon as I'm done, I read it a second time. And I read it specifically looking for what other people are saying about my character. Mm-hmm. What is being said, or how is my character being described or alluded to in any way that isn't my character speaking themselves. And then I read it a third time looking at my text. So because I think you figure out who someone is by who they are to other people and also by who they are to themselves, because neither of those things are the whole person. And then I look at, and I always try to pinpoint some similarities between me and the character that I can hold on to, and some active differences. How am I like this person and how am I not? To kind of be touch points for me. Mm-hmm. And once I feel like I know once I get comfortable with how this person thinks and speaks, then I start thinking about how they move and interact with the world. And similar to Heather's experience, especially when I was in Russia, the last thing we added was text. We started with how your character moves, how they move through a space, how they touch, how they taste. It was a completely different way of looking at things. And the text was almost, I hate to say an afterthought, but it was just kind of what's laid on top. Because the embodiment of the character was the work. And that was really, really eye-opening and interesting. And I think needed and necessary for someone like me who was so focused on the text. What I really love is, and why I was attracted to this program is Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. I love Chekhov. I love this classical theater. And it's so text focused. That this was really wonderful for me to be forced away from my comfort zone of only depending on the writer, but coming at it from the other side of building your character physically from the floor up, and then adding your text on top. But I would say, that definitely helps me embody a character, but I still always start with text. And that first read that I do, where I do not let myself think about the character or focus on the character, really helps me be the audience, and it also helps me get in a state of when I get nervous and when I get anxious, if I start to get, stage fright ahead of a show, I remember that this isn't my play. This is John's play. I'm just helping him tell this story, and that actually really helps me to remember that I'm not the center of the universe. I just have a small part in helping make sure the people in the audience hear this story. Mm-hmm. When I was trying to explain to my mother why I was majoring in theater in college and getting her on board, though I will say she was always very supportive, but she still always wanted to hear from me my perspectives. I told her that I felt that theater was an unbelievably accessible form of education that existed, that was so untapped. a way to teach people new things, to make them revisit old things, but just that was available to everyone, that, you could be any age or speak any language. You can go, because I did it for a semester. I sat in shows. I don't speak Russian. And I was moved by, and I knew what was happening, and I knew what I was supposed to be feeling, and I knew what they were conveying to me, and I was being educated. And I caught that early in college, saying, oh my gosh, this is how you teach people. That's how it all started, right? Oral traditions and storytelling. And, you argue that, if you go to church on Sunday and what you're watching up front and from the pulpit, like, it is all this beautiful form of physical and verbal, visual education. And I think that's special and wonderful to be a part of.
My God, I am so envious of Waylon right now. I am so envious that he has you too.
Oh,
I know the rest of the we are slowly migrating towards the play. And so the characters that you both imbue, I'm guessing, are different. And so without maybe giving away too much, can you talk about what makes your character special, why it needed to be in the play, why he wrote it in?
I think our characters, and I think it's special. So our characters are as different as two people can be who also grew up in the same town and have the same experiences, and have whether they are interested in admitting it or not, have a common ground and a common background. Are
they aware of it? Do they understand?
I think so. I think there's no way you can be. I think part of the differences in our characters, and I know Heather will touch on this too, is the pride and acknowledgement of where we come from and how we deal with that or don't deal with that. Whereas my character left as soon as she could. She was out. She was gone. And is coming back home after 21 years away or more, 20, 21, 22 years away, and how you feel when a place is home and should be home, but is it? And is it the same? And did it change or did I change? And, my character, I think, shows up in town feeling like, this isn't me anymore. Ugh, this is light years away from who I am and what I am. And it doesn't take long before it's like, you know what, this really is who I am, whether I'm excited about that or not. A leopard can't shake their spots, we are where we come from. And we can do with that what we choose. We have a lot of agency about how we form ourselves into people, I feel. But I think that Lorene wants to not fit in and wants to not want to be there. And a little bit of beautiful sadness is that she finds out she really does want to be there, but maybe doesn't really fit in anymore.
A hard part for me doing this is that Cherry Tracy doesn't really listen to. She's so driven and so forceful, and just keeps talking. When she's talking, she's just going to keep talking and talking and talking. And someone else is talking, but that doesn't really matter because what she has to say is more important anyway. And she's right, and she knows what's right, and what's right is family and honor and being a substantial, hardworking person that represents this wonderful part of the country that she would never leave. I remember talking to Waylon about what my character's life would have been like growing up and experiences. And I said, well, Waylon, I think she probably got down to Boston maybe once and saw the ocean. He said, let's think about it that she never did. Let's think about her never leaving that county. Maybe getting down to Bangor, the capital. maybe that's where she went and, became, got her Forest Ranger patch and, her badge, and she got ready to roll. And, and I hope we get a chance to tell you about when we went up there.
Where about?
But to me, I mean, I lived in 6-7 states. I lived in 2 countries. I traveled, I don't know how many countries, how many islands in Greece. I don't know. I'm a person I'm a real adventurer. I want to get out. I want to see. I'm super curious. I'm super hungry. I love to go to remote places, which is why I was like, let's drive up there. So that just blows my mind to think about. But I knew those people because when I lived in Western Pennsylvania, it was a very rural area. And I remember my mother was a school teacher in 5th grade. And she asked the class at one point, how many of you have ever ridden an escalator? And maybe 3 kids raised their hands, which means 3 kids out of 20 had been to Pittsburgh and went to the mall in Pittsburgh, which was an hour and a half away. And I'm just like, my mom's like, can you believe that? And I'm like, can you believe that? So Cherry Tracy is that person, but she's not stupid. And she's not to be trifled with either. She's so proud. She's so proud of the work that she's done to do a job that she thinks is super important. And it's very interesting. And we can talk about the ranger that we met and all of the stuff he told us he was responsible for. And she's a single mom and she raised a kid by herself, but she's generous. She's generous enough to let him go to his dad's on the weekends, and she wants a family unit. She likes traditional, she's forgiving and she's generous and she's got a big heart, but she's tough. She's tough, and she reflects the wild area where she comes from, and she's so proud of. And she could do a commercial for it, and she'd be the first person to write the commercial. And
yeah, I think that's one of the real differences, between our characters is this beautiful pride that Cherry Tracy has and where she came from, and that Lorene doesn't have that or didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Lorene is telling anyone in New York where she lives about the town she grew up in. She was like, I'm gonna quit this popsicle stand. I'm gonna go out and watch me go as far as I can, as fast as I can. And I think that's a really, it's a very interesting 2 different perspectives for the audience to see, which I think are all people we know. Anyone who grew up in a small town, anyone who knows people who grew up in a small town, those are the 2 directions you take. It's either you are so diehard, there has never been a town as fantastic as my town, or, oh God, I couldn't wait to get out of there. What there is no in between.
Yep. And as a mom too, though, I think that Cherry Tracy knows that her son is different, and her son has that special quality of more. There's nothing there in that town for him. So she's not going to hold him back. She's going to say, go, live to your full potential. And I'm behind you all the way. And I'm sure she'd go visit him anywhere. That might be the first time she ever travels, more than a couple 100 miles from her town. So she's not that backward in that she's like, you better stay here and be part of this community, because I think that she's a realist, that Cherry Tracy just sees people and situations for what they are. She's a bit blinded by what she wants a lot, but deep down, I think that she's forgiving.
You can tell you both have done your homework. This is really special. So let's talk about the trip. Whose idea was it? What did you get out of it? Was it profitable? Did it change anything at its basic premise? Or, could you have just done the show without? Is the show richer for it? Let's touch on all those. Whose idea was it?
It was Heather's idea, 100%. And she said, you know what I want to do, and will you come with me? And I was like, what? Go where? Mm-hmm. Oh, all right, I guess. Yeah, let's go. but I never would have
Thelma and
thought about her.
Louise hitting Maine.
She definitely drove the bus on that one. And I will say,
She drove the Subaru
but I actually drove the Subaru.
through all the weather they had.
I did do some rough weather driving. I was very proud of up there. I think it for me absolutely made it richer. I will say one very specific thing that it affected for me is there is a time in the play where Lorene references showing up somewhere and the person she was supposed to meet was not there, which is annoying, right? You know, going up there and seeing where those two places were, we were talking about like almost an hour drive. In the play, it makes it seem like, you know, it's where people live, but where people live is really far apart.
Mm-hmm.
So this was way more annoying and way more maddening. How dare you say you're going to be there and then not be there? This is 2 hours of my life right now. And I had forgotten about that aspect of rural life of you don't just pop over anywhere. Everywhere is a trek. Everywhere is commitment. And chances are your phone doesn't work. You know, like this is not an easy thing. And I was like, oh, and that made that different for me. And that made the choices I made different.
What a great gem. Man.
Yeah, I'm just such a huge nerd. I love maps. I love exploring places that are in the middle of nowhere. And here we are. And we keep referencing Route 11. You know, this happens on Route 11. That happens on Route 11. Watch out for moose on. So here we are on Route 11. We're like, we're on Route 11. And I'm totally nerding out. You know, I just can't get enough of things like that. I mean, and we're north of Benedicta, and something's always happening north of Benedicta. And here we are. We're like, are we technically north of Benedicta? We are technically north of Benedicta. And we're like, yay. And just like seeing that road and there were snowdrifts that covered the first floor of every house. So I'm like, these people can't even see out of their first floor windows for how many months of the year? And, you know, we went into this. Oh, and just the first thing we did was just to hit every convenience gas store, you know, general store that we could. And we're looking, do they have a pizza carousel? This one has a pizza carousel. The first one we saw, they have pizza. Do they have birthday candles? And we're like walking around kind of saying it. And the woman's like, yeah, we got birthday candles over there. What'd you say?
All little things that are referenced in the play we were looking for.
And they had it. And we're like, oh my God, we think he wrote it about this place. And then we would go to another place where they were selling individually wrapped items from like a big pack. And I'm like, no. Maybe they wrote it about this place. And so it was just, and then there was a name of a shop and save or like a supermarket up there that was called Parody, like our convenience store. And we're there taking selfies in front of the Parody. And we're laughing because there's snowdrifts everywhere. And Lorene has this line about, you know, spring here, and doesn't feel like it. Spring here too, doesn't feel like it. And I'm standing next to a snowdrift and we're sending all this stuff back to the cast. It was so funny. Just this little restaurant that we went to, and the guy, you know, what was for dinner was what was drawn up on the board, and half of it was spelled wrong. And because his wife's the cook, but she wasn't feeling well, so you don't want me cooking anything more than that. And just Suzanne went to pay with a credit card, and he's like, wow, it worked. That's the second time I've ever used a credit card machine. And we're like, what? Sign my guest book. We had fried pickles and chicken tenders, and we're signing someone's guest book. And Suzanne was very good because I'm just like a blabbermouth. I can't hold anything. And I just want to talk to everybody. And Suzanne's like, don't tell them what we're doing here. We want to really know what they're like. So don't tell them, or they're going to put on an act or think we're weird or think we're making fun of them. So a lot of people we didn't tell. But at one brewery, finally, I was like, okay, listen, guys, this is what we're up here for. Because, you know, we don't have a snowmobile, which they call a sled. And so we look ridiculous because the only thing to do up there is the snowmobile or hunt coyote and hunt fish, whatever. And these guys were just like telling us what it was like growing up there. And it was just they started school in August, and then in September they had 3 weeks off to go pick potatoes. It didn't matter who you were, whether or not your family had a farm, you had to go out and pick potatoes. And just, and you should see Route 11 in the heart of winter, because it's like a tunnel, because, the snow is up so high. It's like you're just literally driving through a tunnel of white. And I'm just like, whoa. And there's one road. And then we wanted to go to the unorganized territory where we're supposed to be from in the play. But those roads weren't plowed, because they're not plowed, April through November. But they abbreviated April like ARP or something. And we're like, oh, okay, that's how that goes. And then meeting the ranger was just, come on, that was just like so awesome. A friend of mine in Hopkinton, where I live, she went to college in Vermont, and one of the guys that she went to college with became a Maine forest ranger. So when I was telling her about the play, oh, I know a Maine forest, I'm like, no way. So I made sure that she got in touch with him, and then I got in touch with him, and he was on vacation for those days, so he couldn't meet us up there. He said, I'll put you in touch with the ranger up there from there, like that's where his responding area is. So we took him out to lunch, and this kid was 24, he was just so well spoken and put together and professional, and we just asked him a million questions, and sometimes the same question 100 times, and he just kept answering it just so patiently. And then after lunch, do you want to come to the office? And here it is on Ranger Street, and I'm like, oh my God, Ranger Street, and it's snowing like crazy, and he's the only one there, and he's showing us the map, and I'm responsible for this many 100,000 miles. If I were to get a call now, I just have to get in my truck and get there. And we're like, how are you going to get there? Like the road right over there is not even plowed. And just everything that he showed us, all their responsibilities, and how Maine is so forested and so wild. It's so wild up there. There's nothing. They have that one Route 11 where they have a few towns on. But if you go west, forget it. It's all Allagash. It's all wildlife.
Their level of responsibility was really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
For the unincorporated territories, which is the majority of Aroostook County, he is the fire department and the first responder and the police and everything. They, at the time of the play, they weren't armed, but they are now an armed force. And it was, it was just impressive. And also the fact that they wear so many hats means the amount of what's the word I'm looking for? The amount of items they need to be trained on and in is just extensive. So they are constantly training, because you might have to put out a forest fire at some point, or you might have to use your defibrillator at some point, or, all these different, the breadth was so wide.
Mechanics, you have to fix your truck, because no one's going to come get you when you're out in the middle of nowhere. You have to fix your truck. If your truck breaks, you got to be able to be fixing it.
Talk about having to grow up fast.
Well, and it informed me not playing Cherry Tracy, but it informed me about who Cherry Tracy is. And so that as Lorene, that changed what I thought I knew about her. Because if she's a person who was able to do this, that's different than maybe what I had thought prior. There's only a certain kind of person who is dogged enough, smart enough, focused enough, driven enough. And it's self-motivated too. He was a team of one that day.
Right. And not many women on the job. How many did he say were in the state? So like 4, I think.
Out of like 50 or something. And so also to be a woman at the time, like it definitely informed Cherry Tracy's character for me.
So that gets into my next question, which was going to be, why was the trip important then? What did it?
Also bonding, Ray, lots of bonding. Yeah. Listen.
Okay, I get it.
I like new friends. I just moved here in July, and Suzanne and I we get on so well, and it was just, I don't know.
Make new friends in your 40s.
So, what the audience does not understand, but it's felt, is how that trip impacts your character. It adds this other layer, this other level, which had you not done it, you probably would have pulled off the characters very well. But it's funny how it adds a richness to the character that now really enhances the believability that the audience gets, but they didn't know why they got it.
Yeah, and I think Suzanne and I also noticed as well the difference between the men that we observed and the women. The men we did see some women up there vacationing all in snowmobile clothes and, out there. But the women that were working at all of those gas stations and general stores were pretty hard. That's a long winter. I mean, it's long enough in New Hampshire. I can't imagine, another 7 hours north. So, they're the ones working behind the counters. There weren't any men working behind the counters in any of these places. We saw the men in the bars and we saw the men in the bars. So
and men were laughing and joking and jovial, and the women were living and they were at work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting.
Okay, I know you have to leave, so I won't take up much more of your time. Why don't I let you both go? And thank you once again. This has been a privilege. I have so enjoyed it. I hope people who listen to it enjoy it. I can't wait to see it.
Yes, we
can't
wait
for you to see it. And this is such a pleasure. Thank you so much for
thank
being
you.
interested. This is so wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you taking the time.